Everybody, it is a minute after 7, and we have most, if not everybody. I don't see any external guests, unfortunately. Dave Carr and I are going to work on improving our meeting notice process. But let's get started. A new name and face to a number of you at the moment probably is Kim Oswald. Kim, can you unmute yourself? Yeah, okay, and say good evening or something so the camera captures you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Nice to see some new faces and then some familiar faces from before. I'm the new 4-H STEM educator with Cornell Cooperative in Cayuga County, so I'm excited to get going. I'm an ESF grad, and water quality and watershed science was always one of my favorite topics there, so happy to be here.
And as you probably all know, or you will momentarily, we have 6 action teams that we levied on ourselves, one of which is figure out how to help teachers, work with teachers. And so Kim has kindly agreed to chair that action team for us. So, all right. So before we go to the main agenda item, which is talking about those action plans, anyone have any highlights, Aula highlights that you want to mention?
Yeah.
I want to mention the fact to welcome Bill and Jan Vincent and to tell Bill and Jan Vincent that I just sent out the membership form to you. Thank you. It's on the way to Virginia. Hopefully you'll get it before you come back up here.
And Linda, I want to kind of tag on with that because I've contacted them. They were interested in knowing whether or not they had any HABs in their area thus far this year, and I've told them they haven't, and I've told them what to look for and how to get on the HAB maps.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're glad to join, and wish we could be up there, but we're down in Virginia where it's nice and toasty.
Well, up here today, Bill, it was just absolutely gorgeous, and it's been toasty many days like Virginia, but today was really nice.
Yeah, we'll be up there soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else, Jim? I think you were trying to mention.
What I'd like to say is that we gave one of the maps, and thanks to Linda, to Charlotte Newman Smith, or Charlotte Smith Newman, and she was very appreciative of it and thanked us profusely and to try to keep up the good work. She did say she would like, there's a special statement that needs to be put in when you give a donation, and it's a form that she would appreciate. She isn't asking for it now, but next time to be able to have that as a standard for Aula. And I said, well, I'll touch base with everybody on it, but we don't need to discuss that tonight. But she really loved the map. Peter Makowitz and I are trying to get together. He now knows what it is, and we're supposedly going to have lunch Saturday. So.
And I also have the brass plate that Ken is going to be giving me tomorrow that we can send to Charlotte.
Okay, great.
And apologies go out to her that we reached out to her mother to renew her membership, and her mother, we reached out to all of these people, and I got a lot of things back, and she was deceased, and there are things like that that are happening that I'm not aware of, so I just sent it to the list. So I think people understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, Charlotte was very appreciative. That's the point.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Any other highlights from across the Aula before we get into tonight's main agenda?
Was muted.
Okay, so going once, going twice. So welcome everybody. Let me just restart that way. This is Dana Hall, and I have the pleasure of being a couple months now into my, hi Jola, it being a couple months into my 2-year tenure as AULA president, succeeding Julie, and before that Ken, and before that Jim. But we, the AULA Board of Directors, challenged ourselves at our last board meeting to come up with ideas of what we could do to help the lake in the nearest term. Ideas that wouldn't cost much money, couldn't take an awful grandiose lot of planning and effort, but even, thinking to ourselves that even small steps would have to help. So the board members came up with a number of good ideas, voted on which ones they thought were most important, and that resulted in 6 ideas. And that's the thrust tonight, and each of those has a team lead, so to speak. So that's the thrust tonight, as most of you know, is for those team leads to talk just briefly about what their team's thinking is so far. And so Dave, if you could bring up the slide deck, please.
My best here, hang on. What are we seeing here? Hang on,
We're seeing lots of faces.
hang on.
Okay.
How about that?
All right, that sounds good. So what can we do to help the lake now? And Dave, you've got control of the joystick, so if you'd advance this, please. Okay, so as I just mentioned, at our last internal board meeting 2-3 weeks ago, we came up with, settled on anyway, 6 inexpensive ideas that we think are doable in the near term, if not this year, then not too long into next year. And you can see, if everybody's on the screen, you can see these 6 ideas. Is anyone dialed in just by phone?
Yes, I am, only by phone.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read these 6 ideas. Number 1 is go talk with the politicians. And that's our first team. Jim Beckwith is leading that, as you'll hear. Secondly, increase watershed signage. Third idea is to distribute guidance, do's and don'ts, guidance that already exists and is either sitting in someone's computer or sitting in paper form in a box, but let's get it out there to the watershed people. The fourth one is not very romantic, but it's very important, and that is to pick up trash. As you all know, wind and current carry a lot of plastic and cups and beer cans and stuff up to the north end of the lake, and so let's take on an activity. Every bag of trash that we pick up could only help. There's also, as you know, trails down in the flats at the southern end of the lake, and those kinds of places attract a set of trash also. So idea number 4 was simply to pick up trash. Number 5 is to plant trees, both to shade streams, shade the shore, absorb nutrients. And idea number 6 is to work with teachers, and that's where I mentioned and introduced just briefly the chair of that team is Kim Oswald from the Cornell Cooperative Extension. So Dave, if we could go to the next slide. So the rules, everybody, the team leads for tonight, the rules are, we have 6 teams. Let's take no more than an hour, which would put us at about 8:15. So in an hour with 6 teams, each team gets an average of 10 minutes. And please factor in, time for questions and discussions. And everybody who's listening, listen carefully. And if you see a better way to do something or something that's missing, bring that up, okay? So everybody gets about 10 minutes. I'll try to be the keeper of the time clock. And so, Jim, team 1 is yours, and get out there and talk with the politicians. So over to you, please.
Great. Thank you, Dana. You're a great facilitator. Appreciate it. We have not met as a group yet, but we do have some ideas. And looking at our history of what we've done with not only candidates, but representatives on all levels, whether that be the towns, the county, the state, and the federal governments, we need to be able to make sure that our voice is continually being heard, and heard pretty loudly. And the purpose of this is basically to get, you know, the officers and the office holders and candidates to really be thinking about Owasco Lake and what they can do for the lake, either directly or indirectly. And as I just put some of this out, was to meet with current office holders and candidates, further communication with local, state, and federal reps, make sure representatives have knowledge about AWLA, understand what our representatives will do to help restore, protect, and preserve Owasco Lake, and ensure the politician's voice will bring attention to the importance of Owasco Lake's health. Timetables on this are going to be crucial, basically starting in September because of the elections coming up. We have a number of new people that are trying to seek or are seeking the offices, and some of our representatives are not going to be seeking re-nomination or whatever. But we will be meeting with not only our members, and I've touched base with everybody. However, Meg, are you there, Meg? I have not really touched base with you at all.
Yep, I'm here.
But hopefully you'll be part of this also.
Yep,
And
I will.
we will, I'll be contacting all of you by Sunday at the latest, and to see what other ideas and what other concepts we can do. Plus, after tonight's meeting, we'll even have a better idea of if someone comes up with better ideas or different ideas or ways of doing it. We have been successful in the past, and we will continue to be successful in the future. It's just how to go about it and go about it well.
We should switch seats.
That's basically it.
Okay, so thank you, Jim. There's about 5 minutes left in your 10 if you were to use all of it. Any questions or comments from anyone? We very much need feedback.
I would like to recommend, this is Julie, can people hear me okay?
Yes?
Yes.
I would like to recommend that we invite said politicians to some of the other efforts that we're doing, such as the planting trees and the picking up trash and working with kids.
Good. I'll make a note of that. Thank you, Julie.
I also, excuse me, I also think that we can invite them to join us on these Zoom meetings if that's appropriate. Especially for the public meetings, especially seek them out and invite them.
Does anybody have any ideas of which politicians we should be going after more than others, or shall we just keep that in committee?
Jim, this is Rick. How about down to the lower level, the town supervisors and the village supervisors? You know, that's some are aware and some are not.
Well, they're all part of it. And what you've done, Rick, in the past and in the future, we really, they are part of this also. It's just
okay.
Trying to combine all of them, and really with the elections coming up, what can be done to make sure we know if we have someone seeking an office and we have no clue what they feel, what they know or don't know about the lake. We want to make sure that we get the word out and make sure that they're going to help the lake.
I think it's going to vary by what it is we're trying to do as well.
I mean, if we're going after a large grant with Kim Mills, for example, we might want to talk to Cadco or Helming or Finch or somebody. But if we're looking to, help with trash cleanup, I mean, that would be more of a town supervisor kind of thing. So I think depending on what it is we're into at the moment, we'll kind of drive who it is we want to talk to.
Yes.
I also believe, if I can add this, I also believe that each one of them should be invited to be members. I just finished the cover letter and the invitation to all the members of the boards of 33 different towns. And I just sent it off to Dave to be made copies for me to get them sent to. Thank you to Meg. I now have a point person for each one of the 33 towns. So I'm sending the cover letter and the letter of invitation to join us as a way to become part of Solutions. And I believe that every board member that has anything to do with this watershed or drinking water should be a member. So we'll see what happens to that. I'll keep track of them and get back to you at our next meeting, or to let you know what happens with that.
Jim, this is Dana. Are you able to assemble who all the current politicians and candidates for their positions are across the comprehensive list of people that we want to try to reach?
We've started putting that together. It is not, definitely is not complete. And we hope to have that hopefully by September 1st.
Okay, any other discussion or advice or on this action plan? I hope everybody agrees it's an important thing to do.
Would it be appropriate for Aula to contact and support the Owasco Watershed Management Council, trying to get some of the southern towns in the watershed to join the council? Would that be something that we would be, or is that mixing our metaphors up too much?
I'd suggest, Julie, that it's mixing things up too much unless one of those supervisors, so to speak, is in a race, to be some kind of an election, in which case we ought to meet with him or her and their competitors, perhaps. I would think probably.
I have a suggestion, and this is Jim, in getting your list for all of the political office parties, go to the County Board of Elections. They already have it all compiled, and they can just give it to you.
Thank you for that, Ann.
Sure.
Yep, that's very helpful and so obvious. I don't know why I didn't think about that. Okay, so thank you, Jim. Thanks for the discussion, everyone. Dave, if we could go to team 2. So team 2, Rick Nelson, you can see, well, assuming you can see the slides, I won't read all the words on here, but the lead of this team is Rick Nelson, and its purpose is to add signs that highlight Owasco Lake as a invaluable, very valuable water source, to keep out invasive species, don't pollute, raise awareness, all the kinds of things that you would hope signs do. So Rick, over to you to lead us through what the thinking is of this team.
Okay, several of us met earlier this week, and we came up with 5 sign options that we want to pursue or to try to fund and make happen in the near term, since we are in the now category. To read off the sign for those listening, roadside entering the watershed signs, if possible, that we've seen in other places. Number 2 would be add signs to the tributary signs that you see, particularly in the northern part of the watershed that Drew Snell has put up, and because there's room on that pole, and he's willing to allow that any sign to be added to that. To also add more storm drain medallions on storm drains, particularly in the southern part of the watershed. And add also, number 4 is to have clean, drain, and dry signs for invasive species. The numbers increased. They are around the lake and the primary boat launches, but we need to try to find other places and to put those in every place that private or public around the lake. And then also part of number 2 with the existing tributary signs, maybe add the lake-friendly signs that has become very popular in the Finger Lakes now. And there's an initiative, a pledge on the Owasco Lake Watershed Management Council website to make that happen. So if you could click down, I'll talk briefly about the signs. Dave, the next sign, the next slide. This is you've probably seen these around the lake. There are 50 of them one on each side of 25 tributaries in just Niles, Owasco, and Fleming. That's all Drew had. The grant would allow him to purchase, and these are about $60 pole and sign. And it serves 2 purposes. Obviously, it advertises with the subwatershed and that we have these streams going into the lake, but it is a location to put an additional sign that we determine what we will finally determine we can afford and what we want to place below these signs. And a second piece, also, he would like to purchase more of these if we can find the funding to put on more tributaries, and particularly in the southern part of the watershed, to highlight that they all are important towards the waters to the lake. Next slide, please. This is a sign that clean, drain, and dry of your boat to prevent invasive species that you probably may or may have not seen up at the north end of the lake at Emerson Park. They are down at the south end and at other spots around the lake. Drew has these signs. He put several up around the lake, and we'd like to put a lot more. He has some more signs. We may have to fund some poles, but this is a relatively inexpensive because the signs are available either through what Drew has left over or through the PRISM invasive species folks at Finger Lakes Institute. So this is something that can be done relatively easy. I have a request out there to all members to, if you know about a private 1 or 2 person or whatever little ramp that goes into the lake, we'd like to contact that owner and say, can we please put a sign up here to bring awareness to those folks that use your little boat ramp or driveway that goes into the lake. Next, please. These are called storm drain medallions. This is one that has been put in place. Drew did about 100 in the recent past on storm drains. I think mostly in the south, in the Moravia and Locke area. I don't know the exact locations, but he would like to purchase 200 more. These are simple round medallions that use a very strong adhesive. You put it down in the concrete there, as you can see. And this is a current picture that they are durable. And all the municipalities are agreeable to this happening. So to get a couple hundred more, it'd be about $600. So we're going to ask the OWLA board here in a couple of weeks if we can fund that. And then we'd have to get several volunteers, maybe teams of 2 that grab 20 sites and go down and glue these on sometime, maybe next month. We can readily get these. They're pretty quickly available once we order them, according to Drew. But I think they're a great little advertisement about where every drain in the watershed goes to the lake. But this is important, particularly in the southern section of the watershed, just for the heightened awareness in that part of which is over half of our watershed is south of the inlet. And next slide, please. The Lake Friendly Living. If you haven't taken the pledge, there's the website, and there are 2 pledges, and this has become very popular. It's going through all the Finger Lakes. I think it started Canandaigua, but one of the thoughts was that we could maybe this would be the sign that we would add to the tributary signs, or maybe the round center version we would add to the tributary signs. So it's an option, but I'm putting it up here that's to highlight this, that we all need to take the pledge, hopefully at the Management Council website, and you will receive a yard sign that looks like this to stick in the ground. That'll be distributed by the inspection program in the council. I think we're also going to try to contribute Owla ourselves maybe $300 towards this effort. So back up to the other slide, the main slide, Dave. So lastly is the entering the watershed signs. I thought that's a great idea, but apparently it's been discussed with New York Department of Transportation in the past, and they're concerned about security and advertising that you are now entering a watershed that provides drinking water. I'm not sure how the phrasing is, and they don't want that. They have a restriction on that. Well, we're going to determine what the official wording is in that restriction or policy. So if we can't say entering the watershed, maybe we can say entering the Owasco Lake Basin, or entering the Owasco Lake region. That's to be determined, but the desire is to have something that at each major road going into this watershed that we say, welcome to Owasco Lake watershed, or whatever is permitted to highlight where you are now driving, region, et cetera, that you're entering. So that's yet to be determined. And lastly, the schedule, where we divvied up some of our duties to determine some cost about these signs, and the funding sources. Obviously, Owla is a big player in that. What are the the towns and cities regulations in allowing this? Does the state obviously have? I know each municipality has regulations. We're going to find out what they are. Drew signs are readily available, and maybe he still has permission to put up, more signs similar to his tributary signs. And the big thing is, like with the medallions, putting up signs, we're going to need volunteers. More than just a core group to make this happen. So that's the synopsis. Questions or suggestions?
Rick, I'll tell you, I was very enthusiastic about our meeting yesterday because I truly believe that, I know Adam's on, but this is one initiative that can possibly be done now during this COVID-19. That's not going to involve a mass amount of people or whatever. Excuse me, I know, like I said, Adam's on, but he did inquire as to the pricing. And just as one of the board members here, this was a great meeting. I think it's important, this signage, and I think we should really consider all the options in this.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes left on Rick's allocation, so to speak.
Hey, Rick, Bill Phillips.
Yes.
I have a suggestion. When you're boating around the lake, especially coming out the outlet of the lake, why can't we have a sign saying Owasco Lake, drinking water for 40,000 people? Or is that restricted?
We'll have to see what the park says / county about that. So that's a good idea.
I think that the drinking water aspect of our lake has to be pushed over and over and over again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And Rick, as we talked, it'd be nice to put a be watershed aware wrapper around all of this, so that we've got all of this stuff tied to watershed awareness, which speaks to Bill's point about drinking water quality. So I think if we could start to drive that theme, I think that would be helpful to tie it all together.
I agree. I love that idea. And I'm willing to help if you have like a volunteer day or something like that. This is Christina Brooks.
Thank you.
We're going to be up with children and grandchildren. If you'd like us to help, we'd be glad to.
They love the lake.
Great.
Okay. I'll let everybody know when probably the first thing that happens is if we buy more medallions, we're going to need to glue them down. So
we can do that.
Okay. Yes. I think it's simple. Caulking gun and adhesive, and just don't get it on your fingers. Maybe, I don't know. Okay. Thank you.
Rick, this is Adam Effler. I'd like to chime in a little on the lake-friendly living signage.
Sure.
I have some pricing information from Maura Toole of the Seneca Lake Clear Waters Association. They priced out just the circular medallion piece that's embedded within what will become the lawn signs. So the lawn signs are rectangular in shape, so they adapt well to the typical sort of weather repellent political signs that you see used for lawns. But you can have just the medallion, the circular, I say medallion, the circular logo embedded within that sign printed on metal. And that on its own might be a worthwhile addition to the existing tributary signs. And the price for the metal signs ranges from about $12 to a little over $20 each, depending on the quantity that is ordered. So from what I heard from Maura, at a quantity of $50, they run about 12 or 13, or a quantity of 50, they run about $12 to $13 a piece, and a quantity of 100, they run close to $20 a piece.
What's the diameter, of that?
I'm not sure of the diameter. I would have to check. I can check with Maura. But I think I said that backwards in terms of pricing. So obviously the bulk price, the larger quantity, the 100 count would be more like $12 or $13 a piece, and the 50 counts closer to 20. Just to give you an idea on pricing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Dave, we better move on to team 3. Thank you very much, Rick.
My pleasure.
Good idea number 3, team 3, is to get existing literature, do's and don'ts and so forth, if it's still relevant, if it's of good quality. It's not doing anybody any good sitting on their computer hard drive or sitting in a box, in their office. So let's get it out to the public. Peter Rogers is a lead for this, and so Peter, over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Dana. What we did is we kind of did an inventory of what was available, and come to find out there wasn't much available. We had some old one-page sheets that were black and white that had some guidelines for the homeowner of what he could do and couldn't do. When I looked at it, the best source I could find was something that Michelle Wunderlich kind of coordinated for us last year, and was called the Homeowner's Guide, and had the title on the front says 12 Simple Strategies for Sustainable Waterfronts and Landscape Practices. And it has everything from planting native trees to stormwater runoff, reduce impermeable surfaces, use phosphorus-free fertilizer. So it seemed to be a good general document to maybe bring back to life. We had a very few of these, which were actually printed by the county. Those were fully distributed. So we are going out and we're getting quotations on what it would take to print these. And Meg Vanek worked on that today, and we should have quotations by Friday in quantities and increments of 500, because we know there's pricing breaks based on quantity for printing. The thought is to use these in a number of different ways. And it's everything from real estate offices, marinas, Chamber of Commerce, soliciting new members, sending to existing members, Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge, visitor centers, town and village offices, and future AULA events. This might be just a general piece, not too expensive, that we could use to distribute. Another thing that I'm going to talk with Michelle Wunderlich about, she's going to make some changes on it. She's going to incorporate the lake-friendly living logo on it, but also see if there's a good electronic version of this that we could email out to people and cut down the cost of paperwork and get the distribution out. Aside from that, so we should have quotations on prices by the end of this week. Obviously, we'll have to come back to the board and get approval and determine how many we're going to print, if we can print them, and then work on the distribution side of it. And as I say, we have Ann Robson, Elaine Berry, and Meg and I working on this, and we may grow this group if need be. but we'll brainstorm early next week to see what the best way of distribution of these things are. Any questions?
Anybody think that this is not a good idea, not a useful thing to do?
Peter, I think what you've done is great. I think this is important and more help, and it will help with our membership also. So I think it's all very good.
It seems to be a topic that can go across a lot of things, from fundraising to even grant writing to membership to just general education of the public. So it seemed to be a good general brochure to do that.
Yeah.
I'll also look at, there's some other brochures that are out there, for example, specifically for HABs and all, that came from the DEC and the New York State Department of Health. We'll be checking into those too. Those are just small envelope-sized brochures that just explain what the issues are. So hopefully those will be free and we can use those for distribution. This also ties in with what Adam was talking about, the lake-friendly living, incorporating that logo in it. There'll be some verbiage on the back and a link to owla.org, one to the managementcouncil.org, and one to Make a Pledge, which is the pledge that Adam was talking about.
So Peter, are you
Adam,
planning?
maybe you want to jump in and talk a little bit more about the pledge, if you would, please.
Yes, yeah, I'm happy to. So if you go to the council's webpage, we have a tiered system currently for the pledge. The tier 1 pledge is lake-friendly lawn, and the tier 2 is lake-friendly living. The lake-friendly living is consistent language with our regional partners, so our other Finger Lakes watershed organizations. The lake-friendly lawn pledge merely asks people to refrain from the excess use of fertilizers and chemicals. And then the lake-friendly living is inclusive of that request, with additional requests in terms of water conservation, thorough inspections and care for septic systems, and on and on. So I guess one question I have for those of you who've actually visited the website and consider taking the pledge, or who have taken the pledge, I see that folks who've done so have only taken the tier 1, lake-friendly lawn. And I'm thinking, as I've been working through this, you know, I'm curious whether or not it's just confusing for folks. Is it better to have a more robust request and go with the lake-friendly living, have that consistent message, and just drop the first tier? The original concept with the 2-tier was to give some flexibility in terms of requesting various levels of commitment from watershed residents. So I'm open to suggestions there.
Thank you, Adam. We've got about 1 more minute, maybe 2 minutes at the most on this overall Team 3 effort. So,
Just, you know, I hate to keep harping on this, but Peter, if you're going to print these homeowners guides, again, linking this back to Be Watershed Aware as a centralized campaign, the reason I keep harping at it is because if we can centralize it so that we've got one theme across a number of deliverables, then it's easier to get a grant across the whole package of pieces rather than trying to get grants for one of these and one of those. If you've got a comprehensive package of a number of materials, then you can go for a grant and do a number of things with a grant. So that's why I keep talking about it. Sorry.
oh, one more question or comment, and then we better move on.
So I'll bring to the table, there's some discussion about whether or not there's some sense in changing the sort of theme that we collectively came up with, the Be Watershed Aware, to the lake-friendly living, merely because it's consistent with our regional watershed organizations. So I like both themes, but I feel like there would be some consistency if we went with the lake-friendly living.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Important topic, Ken, and everybody that will, I'm sure, talk further. Dave, could you bring up Team 4? Okay, so pick up trash, and our trashy leader, I shouldn't say that too much, is Julie Lockhart. Julie's husband, Scott. Scott, you may be on and listening. I think planned and conducted such a trash pickup campaign maybe last spring or late winter. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Julie, over to you. What's the thinking on this?
Thinking is anybody who takes any time on the water or alongside the water knows what's out there. And it's gross and fascinating. I always look at it a little bit like an archaeologist. No, that's wrong. Anthropologist, maybe, about what it says about us as a species. And it's the thing. It's the yuck that keeps on giving. You pick it up, and there's always going to be more. So it's a continuous process. But my better half here wanted to do just a couple hour pickup in the spring, and we did do that and got 6 large bag and like industrial construction size bags full of garbage in a very short amount of time on the north end of the lake with I believe Gilda's here, and she was one of the 3 of us did it.
It was fun.
And then we roped Dave Carr with no advance warning into coming and picking those bags up for us because we coordinated it on the day that the city of Auburn was accepting garbage without any costs. So that's why we chose the day we did. So our team now, and we met yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I'm getting mixed up with all these meetings. Discussed it. Oh, it was today. That's right. Anyway, we decided to choose 2 sites to start. I mean, you can make this as complex or as simple as you want, and we're going to start on the simpler end and chose 2 sites that this is up for discussion and certainly changing, but at the moment 2 sites, Emerson Park on the north end and the Owasco Flats on the south end, as places that are fairly easily accessible, used a lot by the public, and so you get more bang for your buck that way. And certainly the north end collects a lot with the currents and the wind as they move across the lake and through the lake. That's where a lot goes. So we picked a date, October 10th. The thought for having it that late in the season was that, and again, this can change, but we were trying to think about times when there might not be so many ticks or poison ivy down on the south end if we're in the flats area. We were also thinking about water level might be starting to lower by then, maybe not, but to give us more access to what's in the lake on the north end at least. And we need volunteers to pick up the garbage. We will be, I think Aula will be supplying the gloves and the bags. It's really not very complex to do. And people will wear masks and stay separated by 6 feet. So everybody gets your own bag, no sharing. Let's see. Oh yeah, we had to find a place to take it because it's kind of counterproductive to ask people to do this and then ask them to pay to dispose of the bags. So I have contacted Ed Wagner, who's the town supervisor for Owasco, and he has given permission for us to bring the garbage to their transfer station free of charge. So that's really great. And we also have
Emerson. Maybe not that.
Yeah, and then possibly Scipio might be helping out as well. And whichever one tends to be closer to either end. I mean, the transfer station is very close to Emerson Park, certainly. Probably Scipio might be better for the flats, as I think about it. And then if people can't come together in those particular spots or are uncomfortable being with a group, even if it's spread out, you can also pick up garbage that day. It's from 10 to noon. On your own property, someplace you know of that has a lot of garbage, and bring those bags to a designated place so they can be taken as well. And the last bit, getting volunteer truck drivers. We have Ken Post said he would bring his pickup truck. I believe Linda has a son-in-law with one, and maybe we can lasso Dave into it again. So I think altogether we're in good shape with a rain date. And if anybody has questions or suggestions for a different date, that's wonderful.
Thanks, Julie. Questions or suggestions for this team?
I just wanted to add the fact that when we added the fact that other people could pick up at different areas, my particular thought was that people who live next to ravines, because we worry about the ditches, we worry about the ravines and the ditches. So anybody that lives near a ditch, we could advertise they could pick up in their ditch that day and bring it down. So like Sam and I could go up our ditch here and take care of that or whatever. So.
I see that Ann Robson was on the meeting. I know that right now the Scipio transfer station is in flux. Is that something we'll be able to use?
Yes. Things are much better at the Scipio transfer station. And Nancy, I was wondering, is the flat still considered a county park? Do we need permission from Gary Duckett, or do I contact the Nature Conservancy?
The Nature Conservancy owns property in the farmland area. If we're talking about just the trail that comes off the pull-off on 38, that is county and city land, most of it, and some of it's the Owasco Flats Nature Reserve. The Owasco Flats Nature Reserve is selling our land to the Wetlands Conservancy, and that might change things, but that hasn't happened yet, so I don't think we need to worry about that. But most of that land is in city or county care.
Right.
So Nancy, we would need to get city or county permission, I guess?
They're open trails. They're marked trails that have always been open for hiking, so I don't think we have to worry about that.
Okay.
I do encourage people to dress for tick prevention and poison ivy prevention because both of them are quite prevalent down there. Boots and pants tucked into boots and insect repellent, and then we should be all right.
Yeah, we can promote that.
Yep.
Good deal.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Julie.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that I've noticed, when I've been out on the lake, is in the shallow water areas, especially at the northern end of the lake, we'll get garbage, floating on the lake and also visible 2 feet, 3 feet down. Maybe we could have a little contest with boaters on picking up trash somehow. Once or twice during the summer would be, I think feasible. I don't know.
That's a great idea. I know Owasco Paddles, which is a small craft rental business in Emerson Park. They do a trash pickup like that, like a little contest themselves.
Over there in that sandbar area on a busy Sunday, the Monday after, you can go in there with a boat and see all kinds of bottles and cans down, on the surface and on the bottom, both.
And another thing, we often find more garbage on Thursdays and Sundays. If you can think about that, it's because stuff is blown off people's trucks on their way to the transfer station and blows along shore and then gets in the water. So yeah.
Julie, Rick.
Yes, Rick.
Suggestion, we have a ready list of HAB volunteers around the lake. Maybe they can on that day pick up their zone. If they're active individuals, that might clean up their property and others. So
that's a good idea. If this goes well, what we were envisioning was a friendly contest, maybe between quadrants, to see who could get the most garbage, and you can have a lot of fun with it. We also were thinking of involving children in some way and possibly having an art contest for them to design a trash trophy that could be the coveted, the coveted trash trophy that gets passed around every year to or creative awards for whatever people find. Got to be safe, but you can have some fun with it as well.
Julie, just one other thought. I paddle the inlet quite a bit, so we can also attack it from the water with canoes or kayaks. There's a lot of trash floating down in the snags that are in the trees that are in the inlet.
Yeah, Scott has a lot of experience with that.
Yeah, yep. Canoes, pulling tires out and things, it can be fun. Or
Yep.
And you do come
Julie,
out
this is-
completely filthy.
Julie, this is Adam. I mentioned this morning, but just a reminder, I encourage you to reach out to Drew and Caitlin from the Watershed Inspection and Protection Division. If they're available, I'm sure they'd be happy to help you pick trash.
Absolutely, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other discussion about places and how and volunteers to pick up trash? If not, then thanks, Julie. Thank you, Scott. And Dave, if you could rotate forward to Team 5. Team 5, Adam Effler has agreed, has quite a bit of background, as it turns out, as maybe he can touch on quickly in his overall area of planting trees and tree species and stuff. And so Adam has kindly agreed to head up our tree planting team. Adam?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. And thank you for all that you're working on. It's very impressive, and appreciate all the work that everyone's putting into this. When Dana first requested that I come on as a team lead for the trees team and to give me the assignment to assemble an introduction here, I was thinking sort of near term, like planning a larger scale planting effort that would include securing grant funds, determining match, and planning with one of the local conservation groups who's offered to actually work with us on Onondaga Earth Corps of Onondaga County, and having them on as a sub. Then Dana reminded me that this is what can we do now, and so we still have the sort of greater idea in mind, a little bit of a longer term for over the next year or two for larger scale planting efforts. But here's what I came up for what we can do now. Dave, next slide, please. So what's the purpose? So many of you may know trees stabilize stream banks, provide for enhanced storm resiliency in riparian zones that include stream corridors. They filter pollutants and uptake excess nutrients. They enhance ecological integrity and resilience. They provide additional shade for shore and stream banks, and they sequester carbon dioxide. So I think we all are aware of how important trees are to the watershed. Next slide, please, Dave. Just to review the team members as I understand them. With me, I understand Christina, Gilda, Nancy, Ken, Julie, Kim, Rick, Bill, Ann, Peter, and Linda are all on board this team. I'm excited for all of those who have signed up. There will be quite an effort that we will undergo here to see this near-term project through. Next slide, please. So the do now approach that I propose this evening is a lead by example approach. And so that would, in my mind, it would be pursuing implementation of tree planting projects that really focus on edge of stream and lakeshore areas, but both through AULA member properties. So within your own working group, identifying properties and willingness for AULA members to have trees planted on their properties. And then, and further, it could be extended to members' friends and associates' properties. And I think that this is something that we can make happen as early as this fall or early this coming spring. Next slide, please, Dave. Okay, so here's the basic approach for this. First, we need to determine interest. So I would love to have one of the team members take charge of soliciting interest within the AULA group for this residential tree planting initiative. So the best way to do this would be to create a spreadsheet collecting names, addresses, the number of trees per property, desired locations on each property, and desired species, if any. And I put in sort of quotes here, hopefully, members and members' friends who are interested in this project will be flexible on a specific request for desired species, because really the speciation and the size choice and all trees, various species grow to different heights and sizes. That should really be governed or determined by the location itself. So hopefully folks will be flexible there. Okay, next slide, please, Dave. So next would be to determine the speciation and costs. I'd love to have an AULA member map the addresses that were collected with that spreadsheet with flags for the preferred tree locations. We would then use that map to determine the appropriate species to plant at each location. And then we would quantify the total costs based on the number of trees per species and the tree size that we buy. So it's usually sized by what's called diameter at breast height. And I recommend, from my experience in conservation work with planting trees, that the 3-inch diameter, they tend to have a better success. And there'll be some cost for equipment too, but I think that with tools and such, we can generally pull together our resources. I just have on the side here, did you know, I mean, the cost of a tree greatly depends on the size and the species again. And I think, you know, we're dealing with small trees. These will be hand dug with digging shovels, and an average is around $100. But I think, though, that is including the cost of the labor typically in that average, and that we are going to do that work in kind. And I'm thinking that we're looking more at like $50 or $60 per tree. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll then need to coordinate schedules. So it'd be great to have a team member identify the tree planting team. First of all, who's on the team? Who wants to actually be out there planting trees? I love it. It's fun. It's maybe not work for everyone. But the activity is typically best for a team of 4 or 5 people. And then next, identify a tree team member to schedule those volunteers and or members to assist with the tree planting, right? So we'll need someone to schedule everyone's time for this. I'd be happy to then order the trees. We'll need to organize the tools and equipment. That includes digging shovels, a pickaxe for hard ground, hard hat for certain digging techniques, especially using like a pickaxe, tree stakes, tree ties, tree trunk protectors, gloves, safety vests, compost. Believe it or not, you do 50 or 50 compost so that the tree is more successful. A tarp is part of the process, and personal protective equipment. I'm happy to coordinate with the inspection division to use their pickup truck to move trees and supplies. And I also would be happy for the first day at least to help with teaching proper planting procedures, and that's what that PPP stands for. There is a way to plant a tree so that it's more or less successful. Okay, next slide, please, Dave. I think we're almost done here. So for next steps, you know, this is my first time getting together with a group. I didn't really have a chance to coordinate directly with the team members yet, but I did add all of the team members to an email contacts label in my email program so that I can do topic-specific listserv for email communication with that group. It would be great if we could have all the members identify which role they like. You know, I mentioned some of those roles in this presentation. It's something people can elect a role now, or we can communicate that later over email if it's easier. Okay, next slide. I think that might be it. Next slide there, Dave. And that's it. So if there are any questions, you know, it's a pleasure for me to work with the Owla group. So thanks for the opportunity. And I'm enthusiastic about ecological design, especially when it comes to planting trees. So any questions?
When's the best time to plant? Fall, spring?
So the best time to plant is in the fall when the trees are dormant. And the reason that's the best time is, if done correctly, they require almost no maintenance henceforth. If you can plant very, very early in the spring, that's the second best choice. But the further you push a planting into the mid to late spring, or especially the summer, they require a lot more maintenance and time and effort, and your mortality rate goes way up. So that's the issue.
So Adam, we want to target, what did your schedule show, September and early October? Is that?
Yeah, so September to early October is, that's a great time. I mean, you can push it as late October, early November even. That, you can be sure the trees will be dormant by then. It may get a little cold for the crew, but that would be an ideal time.
Adam, are there particular species that are definitely not to plant? I know, for instance, right now the state's going around taking down a lot of ash trees.
Yes, yeah. So they're removing those trees before the emerald ash borer can become a problem. It's a great question. So again, the speciation is very specific to the location. Ideally we would be targeting riparian areas or lakeshore areas. And there are some species of willow, and sycamores and oaks and others that are ideal for that wetter environment. But then for people who just want trees on their property, that's not necessarily a wet environment. I still encourage that. They may be more interested in ornamental varieties or perhaps fruit-bearing varieties. But again, it's location specific.
And Adam, when you say on their properties, we're thinking trees that would shade the stream or trib that runs perhaps by their property, or the lake frontage, or associated with locations like that, yes?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. The stream shading is important, and also the buffering capacity of the trees. An alternative that some of you may be aware of is natural recruitment. And so that is, for those of you who have lakeshore properties or near stream properties, is to just refrain from mowing the last several feet along the stream corridor. And that helps with buffering as well without having to plant anything. So that's an option as well.
Adam, Rick, what's the funding source for these trees?
Well, so that's a good question. And so my initial take would be to seek funding, would be like a small grants funding. I've been in discussion with a professional colleague from the Upper Susquehanna Coalition. They've had a lot of success with small projects funding for riparian corridors for tree planting. So I want to work with my friend there to identify funding sources that would be workable for our group. But from what I understood from my discussion with Dana is, and I think he knows from his experience, that process is a little longer term than getting something done right now. And so I think, it would be worth considering, if AWLA wants to spend some of their funds directly on this initiative, and if so, to what extent, what amount.
So Rick and everybody, our next board meeting, which I think is on the 20th of August, we'll have some funding related discussions.
Well, does Adam have or we have a ballpark number to start this tree planting, to be realistic, $2,000 or I mean?
So I realize this is probably frustrating, Rick, but it entirely depends. It depends on how many people sign up, the total number of trees, what we end up going with speciation, but really overall it's dependent on the total number of trees that get planted.
So Adam, between over the next couple of weeks, try to help us better define what a reasonably small budget could be to make some progress on this front this fall.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, a top-down approach might also be having a sense of what the total funding allocation would be, and then coming up with a cap on the total number of trees that could be planted based on that allocation.
Yep. So let's try to work that, everybody, over the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Dave, if we could go, I think, to the last slide. And our last team, Team 6, took on the challenge of, despite all the issues around COVID and keeping teachers and children safe and so forth, what could we do, or what could we start to plan to do to help the educators teach students the importance of clean water and clean lakes and so forth. And as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this meeting, we're very fortunate that Kim Oswald from the Cornell Cooperative Extension has volunteered, and volunteered freely, I might add, volunteered to lead this team. We had, I think, a very good meeting today, Kim, and so I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks. Yeah, so I got to meet lots of people today. I'm really glad a lot of people joined. So I personally tried to spend a lot of the meeting getting to know everyone, and from that we had a lot of brainstorming of what we wanted to see happen with this task force. And the biggest thing that we all came up with was we don't want to bother teachers right now. They're all very stressed out. They don't know what the fall is going to look like. So with that, we kind of created a game plan of using fall 2020 to kind of be our brainstorming and our lesson planning stage. But then we also kind of thought, oh, libraries are opening back up again, and we figured libraries are a vital resource in communities, that they are working to engage our youth and they provide lots of great programming. So we thought of that as another avenue rather than just the classroom, because no one really knows what the classroom is going to look like for the next year or so, and we don't want to provide too much extra stress for the teachers. So we figured we could almost use the library as like a testing ground. So that way we could create a lesson plan or an activity, take it to a library, see how that goes, and then we can go and propose it to teachers. And we would have a better idea of what to expect and how to take it to teachers so they could be more receptive to it. So pretty much like some ideas we had to do are pretty simple that could be across all age ranges, all learning styles and everything. To think of like having a drawing contest, an essay contest, or like a video storytelling contest, where we would get like some kind of presentation for the students, whether that be us doing a PowerPoint or like maybe an in-person but socially distanced event at the library. And then across the watershed, we would have a competition for the students to design or whatever, and we could vote. And then the winners, we would hope maybe partner with the Cayuga Museum of Art and History, or History and Art, still learning the area. And that way the youth could have a place to go and see their artwork on display or their work on display. So that's pretty much what we talked about today. Our next steps are, because we had so many ideas, I compiled them into a like Google form where we're all gonna vote on what we all think our objectives are of these lesson plans, as well as what type of lessons we want to focus on. And then from there, we're gonna kind of start focusing on developing our activity, our lesson. So that was a real quick synopsis of our meeting today. So anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Kim. Questions, suggestions, please.
Kim, my wife works at Seymour Library here in Auburn, and they are just barely open.
Okay.
I'm not dissuading. Your idea is fantastic, and I know she'd be, and their staff would be receptive to doing something, but they're barely open as far as letting people in and so on. So they might be able to work with you, but maybe, you know, where you gather kids and stuff, I'm not sure where that would happen yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, good to know. Every library is different right now too.
I know the Hazard Library serves Venice and Scipio in our watershed, and they're doing a lot of work right now for the summer reading program online for kids. So I think that's an approach we might be able to do in the fall with them, have online programming. It seems to be working out well for them.
That's good to hear.
Kim, Bill Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
I took a 50-mile motorcycle ride this afternoon after our meeting. And one of the things I thought about was what we had talked about this afternoon. And the more I thought about it, the more I think we have to think out of the box for kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And kids today are involved with electronics, they're involved with the internet. And I think our approach should be rap, cartoons, contests, something different for the kids. They don't want I know that Linda and Julie will probably disagree with me. They don't want a traditional approach toward what we're doing. You know, they want something different. And kids, when I see my grandchildren walk in the door with their electronics, I'll say to them, turn the damn thing off. Okay. And they are on those electronic devices all the time. And I think that our educational approach has to be somehow through electronics, through the internet. I don't know how.
Well, one thing I just quickly thought of is there is what's called augmented reality, kind of like, I don't know if you got anyone heard of Pokemon Go. That was popular like a couple summers ago.
Yeah.
So there is a free app called Trailblazer. I've used it with New York State Parks, and you can kind of like design a trail that goes like along a designated path. People just have to download this app and then put in the game code, and then you can kind of create an app that is supposed to take you on an adventure.
Gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
So another idea. We can add that to the list.
Oh, yeah.
Kim,
Mhm.
I had contacted Nick Colas at the county to ask him to map all the school districts in our watershed. And I forwarded his response to several of the members. I didn't have your email yet, Kim. So, but there are actually 8 school districts in the Owasco watershed, and a tiny bit of Homer is in the watershed, but very little of that district. And so I forwarded it. Would someone please forward that to Kim for me? I think there's a map with it, along with the list of names of the districts.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay, anything else, anyone? Any suggestions for this team? If not, thank you, team leads. Thank you, listeners and commenters. Very, very helpful. I think it's been a profitable meeting, and we are starting to get some traction on some, I want to suggest, very practical, helpful, doable initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Any closing comments or new business, old business, or if not, then I guess a bit of formality. Would someone like to make a motion to finish the meeting?
I make a motion the meeting be adjourned, Dana.
Jim, you're always good for that motion. I knew I could count on you.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. So everyone, thank you very much. Enjoy the remainder of your evening. Our teams will continue to meet frequently, and so next time we talk, we'll try to give you an update. By the way, our next public meeting will feature a behavioral scientist from Australia, a company called Eviden, and they'll explain to us the progress they made with the sugarcane farmers whose runoff was killing the Great Barrier Reef in their country, and what they are proposing to do, planning to do with the agricultural community, particularly around our watershed. So that'll be the next meeting. Anybody remember what that first date? The first Wednesday in September, anyway.
In September.
Thank you.
September
Thank
2nd.
everyone.
September 6th, okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Second.
September
September 2nd.
September 2 is our next public forum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.